All right, so I had to work some things out with Todd Medina. I'm trying to get him on here. It's been a little bit difficult, but I think we can do it.
There we go.
All right, so now you got me.
Okay, thanks, Mr. Atkins.
Yeah, sorry about that. Um, Now I'm really looking forward to doing this one because you're kind of like old school era, just like me.
Right? Yes,
We all
sir.
kind of found the sport at the same time. So for people that, if there's people watching this that don't know who you are, maybe you could introduce yourself a little bit.
For sure. My name's Todd Medina. My first pro fight was UFC 5 back in, I think it was like 93. So somebody would give me a VHS tape of UFC 1 when I was going to college. And the day they gave that to me, I just quit everything. I knew this is what I was going to do, and that's all that thing was going to go. So back then, there was no cell phones, no internet, anything like that to find out how to get in the UFC. So it took me, a couple months to figure it out and how to get into the UFC. And lo and behold, they were up in Torrance. So it wasn't that difficult after doing that. The thing back in the day was to get picked up by Japan. So I was fortunate enough where Chemo was in UFC 3, and he was a good friend of mine. So Japan immediately picked him up. So at the time, UFC was looking for somebody still big and had some tattoos and just different looking or whatever. So I got a hold of Art Davey, walked in the office. He's like, oh, okay, yeah, let's do this. So they signed me. And then right after that UFC 5, Japan picked me up. And that was kind of the game plan. Because I was fighting like every 6 weeks. They paid you cash. You were staying active. Because back in the day, they didn't know when the next UFC was. They would show one, they would play it, and then just kind of try to figure it out when the next event was going to be, or if there was going to be a next event. It's nothing like there is now. So I was fortunate enough to keep going to Japan until things kind of got situated, and then from then I traveled the planet mostly, just going to different countries, fighting all over the place. Anywhere there was a fight I could get, I took it. And now, with that said, I've got like 13 title belts. Most of them are from all out of the country. And I'm fortunate to, I've seen the sport grow from like at the very beginning and then, to what it is today. So it's come a long way. And like gentlemen like yourself, Todd, that you've been around, take this respectfully, a long time. You've seen the sport grow. So, and that's where I'm at with that. Still, I've never got out of it. I'm still coaching. COVID kind of slowed it down a little bit, so I went from training mostly strictly fighters. Now I train like a lot of professional people, which is okay. So some other things are working out right now, but it's crazy to me. I get guys, whether they're coaching or fighting or whatever, then they retired like, a couple years after they got in the game or whatever. But like a lot of times in interviews, people ask me like, hey, what are you going to do when you retire? Like, what's a no rules fighter do, when they get out of the game kind of thing. So I've still been in it. So as of lately, I'm starting to get over doing the anti-sex trafficking thing. So I'm starting to get my feet wet in that, and but still training people.
Yeah, I had seen you like on TikTok and some of these other, social media apps. You had a pretty big presence, and I was like, you're one of the few guys from that era that was still kind of doing that.
Yeah, you know what? My son hit me up right before COVID. He's like, hey, Dad, you got to jump on this. This is going to be the next big thing. And like, I mean, me included, like take a handful of the guys from my era fighting that are like on social media that they're actually doing it or that kind of stuff. So not too many of us that are actually doing it. So I jumped on it and it was a good thing. COVID kind of helped out. And then like, I was really surprised how many people of our age or my era, I'm not calling you old, obviously remembered if they're on it and they picked up and they're following me. But I get more people that follow me now from the TikTok guy. Hey, you're the fight coach. They've never seen me fight before. Oh, like I get more people per day, per week hitting me up. Oh, you're the fight coach. I seen you on TikTok, like all over the place. Can I get a picture? Can I get a video? It's the goofiest thing. It's so crazy. I
Now,
fought. Yes,
you
sir.
said you got into the anti-sex trafficking. Are you like kind of like law enforcement, or?
So, teaching, first it started, I was teaching women self-defense. And now I just had a really cool meeting in Mexico because San Diego and Mexico are the two biggest spots for that. So jumping into that, like without giving too much away, like getting kids back or getting, you know, young girls back kind of thing. But Tijuana is the most violent city on the planet. So within the next 2 weeks, I started teaching a bunch of self-defense down there to the women. 2 weeks ago, I started going down to the red light district with the ministry, talking to the girls down there, you know, doing Lord's work kind of thing. But there's not a huge line of guys ready to go down there and, like, you know, get kids out of situations or young girls or what have you. So they kind of found out that, you know, that's my get down. I've been trying to get into that forever, to do something like that. Because again, there's not a huge line of guys that are, you know, really want to do it, that are down with it. So that's where that's going right there. So I'll be doing a little bit of self-defense. I mean, with the cartel down there, the girls can only do so much, but just getting girls back or whatever. So that's where we're going with that whole thing.
It's pretty crazy that Tijuana is kind of like you said, kind of the ground zero now, because that's, you know, 20 years ago, people went to Tijuana from San Diego all the time.
Right? It's bananas. And now to find out it's the most violent city on the planet. ISIS got the majority of all their kill tactics and everything from the cartel. I'm like, how crazy is that? So yeah, it went from being a party city, party town, because San Diego was right next door, to, like, you really got to watch your P's and Q's. So even when we go down there now to minister to the girls, the prostitutes, I mean, there's got to be a level of respect down there, and you can't just go down there and start, you know, thinking you're a tough guy and this and that. So it's better to be able to know that, you know, that you can protect yourself or whoever, you know, you have it in your back pocket if you need it. But it's more of the gift to gab kind of thing. So, and the cartel's actually been pretty cool about it, about talking to the girls, you know. Some of them have left the business, you know, because some of them have, like, kind of been sold into it or whatever. So the family has no money, and that's their main source of income, is their daughter being a prostitute.
Now, when you go down there, like, I've never been to Mexico, actually, believe it or not. But like, when you go down to Tijuana, is it still similar at all the way it was, or?
It's changed a whole bunch, Todd. Actually, I just got back yesterday. I've been down there like 3 days for a different thing, working with the Ukrainian camps. So there's a bunch of Ukrainians that came over into Mexico because they can get through the border there. But from 20 years ago to what it is now, it's like night and day. It's nothing how it used to be. I was surprised how many people are still down there partying. It seems almost like there's more families. I don't know what, like maybe living there and crossing over for work and then going back. It wasn't, at least since I've been there the past, you know, whatever, couple months, it's not like the party town it used to be, or at least that I've seen. Even in the red light district, where the big clubs are for, you know, prostitutes and all that kind of stuff, that didn't seem to be very populated. I was really surprised about that. I mean, there's definitely Americans over there, but nothing how it used to be. So even before COVID, I'd done some security and taken some guys over there, and the place was out of control. But then since COVID, you know, recently or whatever, it's kind of slowed down.
So if Americans go over there, it's not necessarily dangerous for them to be there, or is it?
Yeah, correct. As long as you're not being a knucklehead, because that's still a lot of income that goes over there. So, you know, they know what's up. It's guys people being knuckleheads, or, you know, getting in the business of doing stuff they shouldn't be doing. But yeah, because they understand a lot of the American dollar goes over there, you know. So but just because word of mouth and on the press, you know, in the newspapers and stuff, it says how it's so violent. So not so many people are going over there. Same thing, like I train a bunch of people that live in Beverly Hills. Like Beverly Hills is out of control right now. People getting watches stolen, and they don't report near about what's going on over there. I mean, Beverly Hills is kind of violent. It is violent. So I picked up, you know, quite a few clients just so for like self-protection, you know, teaching them how to do this. And like the look over there right now, it's funny. They kind of have clean cut hair, but like their beard's real bushy or whatever. And these are people with some serious money, you know, just to kind of give them that rugged look. So somebody's got to think twice, you know, if they're going to do something. But these guys got like $500,000 watches on their wrist, you know. So, and it's just a misdemeanor if you're carrying a handgun. So most of these guys, even without the concealed weapons permit, are carrying. So it's just strange times we live in. Very strange times.
Now, you had said, let's kind of get back to when you had said you first saw the UC VHS tape. What were you doing? You said you kind of quit everything to...
I was going to school for sports medicine, kinesiology. I wanted to be a sports trainer guy. And somebody gave me that tape who was, I believe he was in Horian's school. And he'd been trying to kind of get me to go train jiu-jitsu before. He was like, oh, you have a mellow temperament. This will be a good art for you. And this and that. But at the time, it was like, I think he was paying like $600 a month. And for something that I didn't know anything about. And I go, I'm not going to pay somebody $600 a month. But then he came back, you know, a short time later after the UFC won and gave me that. It was probably the next day, actually. Gave me the tape of that. And he goes, hey, I think you'd be really good at this. Just from like being, you know, having grit and, you know, being in some street fights or whatever. And I saw that and I was like, I was born and bred for this. So it took me a while to find, because it's not like it is now. People don't realize that. There was maybe there's maybe 6 legitimate black belts in the state of California. Some, and most of them were all gi. They weren't going to teach you anything, especially if you went to one of these guys and said like, hey, I want to fight in the UFC. They're like, no way, because they were partners, and Horian was one of the partners in the UFC. So we had to kind of backdoor that one too when I got in UFC 5, because I was training jiu-jitsu, but they put me in as JKD. But yeah, the college, like I just knew, yeah, there was no turning back. There was nobody talking me out of it. Yeah, that's what I was going to do. Is fight in a cage.
And your first contact was like Art Davie and chemo?
Yeah, so I actually, here's one. Okay, remember Joe San, obviously?
Yeah.
Okay, because Joe was, and I'm still guessing he is or whatever, but he was a black belt in like Kung Fu or something in the sport. So all of us, it was Joe San, chemo, and myself, all lived in Huntington, but Joe was in the movies. Joe San was in the movies. And being a black belt, I figured, okay, well, Joe, you probably have the plug to get me in. So he hadn't even seen it yet. So I go to Joe maybe a day or two after I got that tape, and I'm like, hey, Joe, get me in this UFC stuff. And he's like, no, Toddy, don't do that. Those guys are straight killers. Like, you'll straight die in the cage. I was like, really, Joe? And he's like, yeah. So I left that conversation, and like a half hour later, I'm like, screw that guy. Like, I'm going to get in. That's what I'm going to do. So Joe found out how to get in earlier, faster than I could. So he got chemo in number 3 in UFC 3, because those two were really tight at the time. And then it kind of caused a little bit of friction between Joe San and I, because the guy just always ran his mouth. So Art Davie almost had Joe San and I scrap at the Torrance Academy to see who was going to be in UFC 4. But it never happened, and I don't know how that worked out. But Joe was obviously in UFC 4, and then I was in UFC 5, which I'm kind of grateful I took that now, or went in that order. So, yeah, that's how that whole thing went down, is Joe San kind of played a big part in that by not doing anything. So, but after chemo was in there, because I remember, like, it was almost the day after K1 picked chemo up. Right after that, he got $100,000 for 4 fights, and then and that was way before the contracts there are now, like exclusive and all this and that or whatever. So chemo just bounced UFC, and they're like, wait, we need somebody big with tattoos, and it just worked out that we're all kind of from the same group.
Was Red Armor Kaio with you guys also?
Oh, here's a funny story too. Oh, we got good stories, Todd. So Rudy was in that group. He wasn't training with anybody, but we all trained at the same like weightlifting gym. It was Powerhouse down there. So right after, he might even went to UFC 5 with us. I don't remember that exact part of it, but Chris Brennan did. But that's a different story too. So right after, Rudy's like, "Hey, you got to get me in the UFC." And back then, it was, I mean, after you were in, like you knew everybody. It's, well, maybe like now. I'm like, okay, it's no problem, because he said he was the basically the Ecuador UFC champ. I don't remember what they called it back then. I'm like, okay. He's like, "You got to get me in the UFC for my country." He's giving me the story. I'm like, okay. So I call Art Davey, and I'm like, "Hey, I got the Ecuadorian UFC champ. Can we throw him in?" And he's like, "Hey, are you backing him?" I'm like, "Yeah, he's got a letter right here from the country, supposedly, that says he's the dude." So I send him some pictures. He's got the look and this and that or whatever. So he's like, "Okay, boom, he's in." So none of us really trained together, just other than at the weight gym. So one day I'm like, "Hey, Rudy, if you need extra time or whatever, you can come train with us. It's no big deal." He's like, "No, I'm busy enough doing my own training. I play video games." That's how he gets ready for fights. He never won. He was never in a fight in Ecuador for anything. He just composed this letter. I'm like, "What are you talking about?" He's like, "Yeah, I don't train. I just play video games." He took karate or something when he was a kid. I don't know what it was. I'm like, "No." So he just looked at weights, didn't train. So we get to the UFC 6, because now, like, I'm supposed to his manager. I'm like, "Rudy, you can't do this to me, bro." I remember as soon as I got off the plane, John McCarthy pulls me. He's like, "Toddy, what are these rumors I hear? This kid doesn't train. He just plays video games." I'm like, "I didn't know about this. I'm sorry." Blah, blah, blah. And it was still random, who you fought was random. They pulled it out of that turn machine thing. God willing, the luckiest thing ever, he didn't pull Tank, because Tank would have killed that kid. But he fought. He got
That's
Pat Smith. Remember him coming across the cage, the front kicking that kid? Boom. But Rudy was with us. Sorry for that tangent taking off. But that was just a funny story after that whole thing. I was so grateful that he didn't get killed, because John was like, "Man, the UFC is going to get sued because that guy's going to be the first death in the sport." And I was like, ugh. It was really bad. And it was like,
Tank knocked out Pat Smith in the lobby or whatever.
yes. Yeah. You know what? I just did a seminar with Chris Brennan in Texas, and we were talking about that story, because it was Tank. There was like Tank and like 3 or 4 other guys that were in the lobby, and Chris Brennan was cool with all those guys, but they'd been drinking, obviously, and tried to start something with Chris Brennan. And it didn't end up happening. But then they walked 20 feet and ran into Pat Smith, because they said some words to Pat. Pat Smith's not going to just be quiet about it, and that ended up like that. Poor guy ended up leaving in an ambulance.
Yeah, it's crazy, some of these stories that people don't know about. But I remember hearing about that one.
Yeah. There can never be another time like this or that, between cell phones and people doing this, and just rules and regulations, and just all like, it'll never be that way again. All the good, crazy stories from back in the day.
Well, we did just have that thing with Masvidal and Covington.
Oh, yeah. Yes, sir. Yeah. How much street cred does that give that kid, I'm like, yeah, that's a good point. Good point.
Masvidal is kind of old school, though, so.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. To have Roberto Duran, like, even obviously in your corner or whatever, but to like mess with you like that goes to show that, yeah, you definitely got some street cred with you. Yeah, I like that story.
Think about that when you heard about it.
I get where he's coming from, but like, you can't do that. I mean, obviously. So the repercussions of all that right now, it's just, I mean, if somebody said something bad about my family or my kids or whatever, like, it's just a different time. I don't know if I would have done anything back in the day. Maybe I would have. I don't know. But now I wouldn't.
But a lot of guys back then would have.
Yeah, back in the day, yeah. And you probably wouldn't have gotten in trouble. Because I remember just getting in fights, like whatever, nothing, just for whatever reason you were in a fight and the cops would show up and just break it up or whatever, It's just, I mean, going back to Tank, look how many people Tank beat up. by, they didn't even want to fight. He would just walk into a club and just start beating people up. And really never got in trouble. Got arrested a couple times, but you know, nothing of too crazy. But yeah, you can't get away with any of that now. They don't put up with that violent stuff anymore.
So let's talk a little bit about your career, like maybe some of the fights that you remember most vividly, perhaps.
The funny part is I remember the ones more I lost than I won. I took in that Vanderlei fight I had. If that was the best shape I've ever been in my life for a fight. I trained my butt off for that thing. But the night before, I got food poisoning. But like, I'm this weird guy. Like, I gave you my word I was going to fight, then I'll still fight. But I remember them picking me up like I was thrown up in the room, on the way to the arena, at the arena, on the way to the ring. But because Pride's the one that put that fight together. And who would ever won that fight, that was going to start making some, like in MMA, real money. So we were going to be good to go with that. So, and from that, I have a crack that goes behind my eye and down my cheek. So it took me like for a year, I'd have to wake up a little bit early and crack the door and let the sun come in, crack the door, let the sun come in so I could see. It was just a big old mess because I went to the doctor and he said, if you fix it, they take my eye out and put the plates and the screws and all that kind of stuff. But if you fixed it and I got in another fight and somebody hit it, it would just completely destroy it. So I'm like, I'd just leave it, you know, because I fought right before COVID. So it's not like I plan on stopping to fight anytime soon, or at least training really hard. But that was a pivotal fight for me that obviously I lost. And then one that really did good for my stock was I'm the first and the only American to win the Russian heavyweight title, the M1 belt. That one did really well for me. And it's starting to pay off now even more since I've had it, since nobody else has won that belt. That was one of my favorite ones. I was getting ready for a fight, and I just so happened to be in like pretty good shape when they called because it was a last-minute fight. You know how promoters work. They can get you to fight their boy and somebody's not in shape, but I just so happened to be in shape. But I had to put that guy away 3 times in one fight. So before they stopped it, because that was like, back then, it's not so, well, especially with Pride gone, it's all mob ran. So like, I put him down like within the first minute or something. They go, no, you got to keep going. I'm like, what are you talking about? So we did it again, like maybe 30 or 40 seconds later, put him down. No, you got to keep going. I'm like, what the heck? And then so finally at the end, I put him down one more time or whatever, punches, so they stopped the fight. But that one did really good for my stock. That was a good one. And it's still today. Like I was down in Mexico volunteering for the Ukrainian refugee camps, and I was so surprised how many of those people knew who I was. I'm like, what the heck? That one was kind of surreal to me. But those 2 fights, that was a big win that was good for me, and a big loss that was, you know, still good for me. But kudos to Vanderlei. But like, I'm so blessed. I've got to travel the planet, getting paid to, you know, meet some really cool, like we wouldn't be talking right now, obviously, if you know, I wouldn't have been fighting all this time. But I met some really cool people, seen some really cool places. Yeah, for me, it's been a really good experience. I've got nothing to complain about. It's been fun.
What your opinion on Lober was?
I'm sorry?
Someone here asked what your opinion of John Lober was.
So that's another one too. John started off, I don't want to say with me, but with me from the very beginning. His first pro fight he went to, and John's always been a knucklehead. And if he was here with me, I would say it. But when you like, well, this story might go on a little bit. He was kind of always rough beforehand. So he gets that first fight in Russia, goes over there and wins. And during that trip, his dad passed away, and him and his dad were really close. So he gets home from that trip, his dad passed away, and I'm gonna go outside a little bit. So from that, it made him a roughneck to a real roughneck. So in the beginning, he trained with me. We actually trained quite a bit. we trained quite a bit. But then as like I went to train with Carson Gracie, so he kind of stayed doing his own thing. So because he was pretty much a knucklehead, like he was running with Tank for a while and just not being the best person he could be. And there were stories going around him about beating guys up that he shouldn't have. So I hadn't seen John, like we hadn't hung out in a while. And then just, I want to say the past couple of years, I ran into John. And I think just from him, I don't think I know, from him, like, taking the hard life kind of thing, like it's really messed him up. So like guys were following him and the FBI was out to get him and all that kind of stuff. It was really sad. So, but I love the guy. I'd give the shirt off my back for him. Yeah, he's just a different guy. I don't know if that's the answer you're looking for, but tough. John Lumber's tough, that guy.
Yeah, tell me about like the Huntington crew, like, you know, because those guys were all pretty instrumental in the growth of the sport.
That was the place. There was a big wrestling coach back in the day, Rich Alvarez. He was from Bakersfield. He was in some sort of scheme of things. In the middle of us, or at one point of us, we all kind of trained with him a little bit, but it was just, there was a bar. He used to do a lot of security. So there was a bunch of us that used to do a lot of security, but there was a ton of street fights in Huntington back then. I mean, like really good ones. Nobody ever got in trouble. And that whole, it was just, I don't know if it was in the water. I don't know what the heck that was about, but we would just fight all the time back then. It was so crazy. Yeah, and the guys that people moved into Huntington because that was like the hot spot. Tito was from there, Tank was there, Chemo, myself. I mean, it just kept growing. I think Rudy was from Fountain Valley or somewhere close, but there were so many of us that were there, and it just spread like wildfire. Before you know, there's like 20 dudes there. Yeah, that place was crazy, Todd.
Yeah, I think a lot of the like coastal areas seem, because now Florida seems to be blowing up there. You know?
Yeah, right? Yeah, that place is no joke right now. Yeah,
so
no
I think
joke.
The risk takers, so to speak, you know, kind of.
Yeah.
Place where law and order is probably not championed, you know, it's just kind
of. Yeah. We had some guys fighting in Florida a couple months back ago, but I couldn't believe how many guys there are that are fighting, Todd. I mean, there's events like every weekend. It's like Mexico down there.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. It's like there's events and gyms all over the place.
Yeah.
It's almost like they have their own team.
Yeah, for real. For real.
Yeah.
In the middle of COVID.
Florida, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, for real.
Because it kind of reminds me of the way things were back then, sort of, you know?
Yeah, no, I'm with you.
Major events, but these are all these different little small ones where people are kind of getting noticed or trying to get noticed.
Yeah. There was a couple guys before COVID, because I was going to send some of my guys to Florida, but it was like underground or whatever you want to call it. They're like, oh, that's not going to be good for their name, you know, after COVID. And I'm like, sucker, they got to keep fighting. It's not that you can just, you know, sit or whatever. So I talked to a couple of promoters like, yeah, we're going to have it on a tennis court. I'm like, you guys are good. Let's do this. It was crazy. Same thing, you know, like how you're saying, like Kimbo's there, Masvidal, you know, just taking fights. But that's what gets you tough. That's what gets you tough.
Now, are you in the gym still, or?
Nah, you know what? I closed one right before COVID because I was going to open up a big one. And then COVID came, and I'm super grateful I didn't open that big one because it was going to be really big. So I started training like successful business people. And now I'm like all over the state training people. I was supposed to open, I still probably will open up a gym in San Diego, but the first one was going to be inside of a mall. It was really cool. But on the other side of the mall, 24-hour fitness was there, and anything over 5,000 square foot for my gym, they have the first right of refusal, so they shut it down. So I've had 3 different buildings that kind of fell through. So for whatever reason, and we'll figure it out here sooner or later. But so now I'm just kind of like bouncing around training people, which isn't bad. I don't mind it, but I'd rather have a home to where I can just train a bunch of monsters.
Now let's kind of talk about, you know, you're there in the beginning as the sport is growing, and obviously you pay attention to it. This guy's asked how many fights you got in at Margaritaville.
Oh, what? Yeah. That's a bunch of us were there. That's one of the things. The cops were so cool. We'd get in fights or whatever, thinking like, oh, we might get in trouble, and the cops would show up because I was training a couple of them, but they'd be like, don't do that jujitsu shit until we get here so we can watch. They were so cool. I mean, yeah, there used to be fights like all the time, but like Lober worked there for a little bit with me. There used to be a bunch of Romeo Ram, Chris Brennan was there. There's probably a dozen on and off fighters that were there, but there was always fighters working, but everybody was super cool. That was a place you definitely didn't want to get, you know, started anything, because there was a bunch of us. There was like 4 or 5 guys on staff all the time. It was just a really cool place. A bunch of pro athletes and celebrities and movie and TV personalities were there all the time. Like the line was like 3 hours long every weekend. We made really good money, and it was just a fun place to work. But yeah, we used to get in a lot of fights there. Sorry.
And what is it like for you now? Like I said, you were there as the sport is growing. You know, you're part of that first wave of guys, and you're seeing the sport grow now. You know, what do you think of it now as to what you're seeing?
There's a handful of guys that are really here, but most everybody shows up in the UFC not to lose. They're not there to win. They're just there not to lose. And it makes for some really boring fights. Now, here's where the girls, I think in another, like they're kicking butt right now, but in another year, 2 years, the girls are going to be like where it's at. Because they're about it. But with the extra rules and this and that, like I remember, and I'm still a fan of the UFC, but when I got in the UFC, the main goal was to fight out of the country so you could make money. Most of these guys, well, it'll never be that way, or, you know, maybe not for a little bit of time, again, to where you can make better money out of the country. But that was the main goal. You fought in UFC, you went to Japan, and you started making money, you know, cash money. But just with the, like, it's just all, excuse me, it's all, the majority of it is flash, like, and I get it, you got to put butts in the seats, but you know, what's your social media and this and that, like Connor, you know, like that's his mouth is what's made him, I'm not saying he can't fight, but his mouth is what's made him so much money, you know, like the Diaz brothers, that kind of stuff. And I'm not hating on them, but it's just changed. It's just changed. But I'm still a huge fan. Always will be.
But are you around any of the guys who were around back then? You know, as far as like,
you know what? There's not that many of them around anymore. So no. Other than I was with Chris a couple weeks ago, but there's not. You know, there's no. It's very strange. Like I was trying to help Lober out, right before and during COVID a little bit, but that poor guy is just out there. But there's not that many of us around anymore, you know. And I'm on social media like it's my job, but I don't even know how it came out that way. But
I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I thought it was interesting because, you know, I read comments and guys, and I'm like, they probably don't even know who this guy is.
yeah, for real. Of course,
yeah, you know, to read the stuff. I was like, this is, yeah. I mean, what did you think of the feedback, and maybe not the feedback, but the response you're getting from that?
To be honest with you, I was really surprised. I was like, okay, I'll be cool if I get like 10,000 followers or whatever. That'd be pretty cool. And then it just it took off. Because I don't downplay anybody or whatever, but like a bunch of stuff that other guys are teaching isn't correct or right or whatever, and I'm still coming from the old school, like if that doesn't work, you know, somebody's getting their ass kicked. So like I'm just real with people, and it's so funny. And then I've got all these young kids hit me up, like, okay, so I get married men that have kids or don't have kids that hit me up that their wife thinks because they're a man and they're married that they know how to fight or they can defend the family. I get these guys hitting me up. They're like, dude, I don't even know how to throw a baseball, let alone I've never been in a fight before. What do I do? And that's so strange to me, Todd. So that's one. I get a couple. That's one aspect, and I get these young guys coming up where maybe their dad's not in the picture. I get a bunch of those guys, and I get a bunch of, like, I don't want to say angry women, but women that are all about it. I think probably I think it's like 42% of my followers, whatever you want to say, are women. I mean, and on Instagram, it's nowhere near that. Mm-hmm. So it's strange with that one. I think I'm going to make a left turn here pretty soon and start doing more women's stuff than for the guy. I mean, anybody can use it or whatever, but maybe more self-defense stuff, because that's kind of like a thing right now.
It is. I've started promotion on maybe his third event, and he says he can't keep a woman signed, like, because he's a fairly new promotion. They'll get picked up by someone bigger just that fast. He'll sign 2 days later, they're off the card, you know?
That's so cool to hear. Yeah, good for them. I mean, but not for the promoter, but yeah, good for the girls. Yeah, it's a thing.
Yeah, he says the opportunity for them is insane right now as far as, you know, every promotion is, you know, picking up anybody that can fight, you know, relatively well that's female. They're getting picked up by everybody.
Todd, where do you live? Where are you at?
I live in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Well, Tulsa, Oklahoma.
How's that?
Well, I'm from this area, but, you know, I lived in Japan. I lived in Hawaii for 14 years. I lived in Japan. Oh. This kind of a quiet community area where I'm at, you know. But Tulsa's a fairly large city. I live like maybe 25, 30 minutes away, you know. Tulsa's like a mid-sized city, I would say, you know, if you were compared to a big city. But, I mean, you fought on Oahu too, didn't you? Or you came
Yeah, I was the first one to put a cage in that place, in the Blaisdell.
Yeah.
I love that. That's where it's from. That's where I know you from more. It's
yeah.
Hawaii. Okay.
But I was also in Japan during the Pride era, you know, 2002 to 2005, when it was as big as it got. You know? So I got to see a lot of that stuff. And, they do some of it here, but it's not, you know, it's not anything major big, you know, but they do have some events around here. You know, Oklahoma City and Tulsa area, there's some casino. They have a lot of casinos here. You know, a lot of these Indian casinos, they're all over the place.
Oh, right on.
They do have some events like that, you know, like they have with IFC or some of the events they had in California.
Yes, sir. All right, is boxing bigger or MMA over there?
I'd say MMA is bigger.
Okay.
In the area. Now, there are some boxers. Tommy Morrison's kids are boxing. You know, Kenzie and trying to remember the other one's name, but they're both professional boxers. Tommy's manager manages them, you know, so they're drawing some crowds here and there.
Wow. They any good?
I would say MMA. Yeah, they're pretty good. Yeah.
Okay.
But I would say MMA is the bigger of the two. From a consistency standpoint, I'd say for sure it is.
Okay.
But yeah, you probably know me from Hawaii, I would say.
Yeah, that's where that just put a big old light above me. Yeah, Hawaii. That's so cool.
Yeah,
how'd you end up moving from there?
It's a special place, you know?
Yeah, right? Yes, sir. Yes, sir. How'd you end up in Oklahoma?
Well, I'm from this area, you know, so I was gone 95 to 2013. I was gone a long time. And when my parents are getting older, you know, so I came back here, you know, which I'm glad about because I was able to spend about 5 years, you know, before my father passed. You know, so I'm glad that I came. Had I not come back, I felt bad about it. You know.
What a good son.
Yeah, I try to.
What a good son. That's so neat.
Yeah. I think it's important, you know, if you have a father, that is, you know, or good parents.
Yeah.
Not everyone, like you said, not everyone has that. But yeah, I mean, I thought it was just really interesting to see what you're doing. What do you think? Actually, someone's going to ask a question here. Let's see.
Okay.
Yeah, that is right. Hasim Rockman. Yeah, Hasim Rockman also lives in Oklahoma City, and his son Kinsey, Tommy
Oh.
Moore's son, is going to fight Hasim Rockman's son next.
Oh.
So that's interesting.
I'd pay to watch that.
Yeah, they usually fight on. I want to say the fights are usually on ESPN, maybe. When they fight, just kind of like Tommy was, but
What weight class, Todd?
I don't know. I'd have to look it up. I don't think either one of them are heavyweights. But yeah, the thing that Tulsa's known for, if you ever see the movie The Outsiders, it's kind of an old movie with,
Yeah.
one of Tom Cruise's first movies. Emilio Estevez was in it. All these guys, C. Thomas Howell. It was filmed in Tulsa, The lady who wrote Outsiders went to high school in Tulsa. So a lot of those sites, like the house is still here. The place where they had the big brawl and the
What?
outdoor movie, the drive-in, it's still there. The Circle Cinema. So a lot of people come here to visit the sites, and Danny O'Connor from House of Pain, the rap group House of Pain,
Yeah.
he bought the house, the Outsider house. He bought it for like $15,000. It was falling apart at the time. They were going to destroy it. He bought it. He fixed it up. They have tours there. He's got merchandise he sells. He moved here. So he's kind of like the de facto, almost like the de facto mayor of Tulsa, I would say.
Yes, sir. Yes,
The most
sir.
recognizable person in Tulsa, I would say. So yeah, he does that. He's a big fan of the old movies, Outsiders. He does screenings of like The Warriors at a local theater here once a year. These old movies that he's fans of. The Outsiders, obviously, guys from that movie, they come here like once a year for the anniversary. They tend to have like a big, Ralph Macchio will come, and, C. Thomas Howell, other people.
That's so cool.
So if you're up in Tulsa, that's what you could look for.
Yeah, absolutely. Might go out there for that Morrison fight. Goodness.
Yeah, I'll have to, I actually had his first wife was on my show not that long ago, Dawn. And I'll have to send it to you, but we talked a lot about Tommy, and, the reason I knew of her is because there was a 30 for 30, ESPN 30 for 30, which is called Tommy. They had the debut here, and the Circle Cinema, it's kind of like a nonprofit cinema. And a lot of times they have people talk before the movie, and she and Tony Holden, who manages his kids now, they were the ones who kind of talked before the film and took questions from the crowd. And so I knew who she was from there, and she came. I'll have to send it to you. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, please. That would be cool.
So, before we finish this up, I just kind of like to let people, if there's something you wanted to leave the interview on, or where people can follow you, obviously, because you're pretty popular,
That's great.
Yeah.
Like I'd like to say I'm on TikTok the most, although like direct messaging through Instagram's the best way to go. But I've got a lot of things in the fire right now. Like the past year and some change, like I've always been in church, but like not to this level. So, like we'll see what happens. Cause there's I might, I don't want to say get pulled, but I'm being led to do some other things, through the ministry. So we'll see what that looks like or what happens. But, anything to do with training or sport, like I just busted out Todd, I just broke out my, I had to split my storage up, and I've got a ton of signed stuff from back in our era. Like I've got not that Hoist won a belt, but I got the Hoist, Couture, Chuck Liddell. I mean, I got all these signed belts and gloves. I got the original UFC gloves. Remember the champion video across the street from Tokyo Dome?
Yeah.
I've got a bunch of stuff from there signed. I just got boxes of stuff. So I think I don't know how, I'm going to just give it to a museum or sell them or something. I don't know, because I'm probably doing anything with it.
There's an Instagram called MMA Museum, and they'll pay for that stuff.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they'll pay a lot of money for that. Ensign told me he sold them his, I want to say it was his gloves maybe from the Von Chancham fight or something. But yeah, there's some sites here on Instagram that'll pay you a pretty penny for some of that stuff.
Oh, okay.
I'll find it for you because I know Ensign did business with them, I think.
Okay. How's that guy?
So yeah, I'll definitely let you know about it.
Okay, thank you. But if anybody's got questions or something I can help them with, or what, I don't know. I had, like, not too many people know this too. I had a fight organization over in Eastern Bloc Europe, and I used to just crush it. But then that was 2008 when the economy made a left turn. So maybe just if you need help, maybe getting fights out of the country or what, I don't know. But anything I can do to help anybody, like, please don't hesitate to hit me up.
What's your TikTok name?
The fight coach. The fight coach. Okay. Yeah, that's my get down. Or if you want a video, you need me to go over something, I'm all about it. Or talk about whatever. That's my get down. To talk to somebody who's been in the game is really cool. Yeah.
I'm grateful that you did. I want to thank you for taking time to do it. Especially I love doing these ones from our era.
Man, that's so cool.
So
I would love to sit and just have one and just talk stories, because, man, we could kill.
Oh yeah, I could bring like you and a couple other guys on from the old school, and we could just jam on it.
For real.
All right.
Okay. But I appreciate your time, sir.
Oh, I appreciate you taking the time to do it as well. And like I said, I'd love to have you come back. We could, like, I've been talking to Francisco Bueno a lot, lately. He's got a guy in Vegas. They moved to Vegas. Carlos Mota is his name. He's got one guy. They moved to Vegas. He lost a title fight in LFA, and then they moved to Vegas. They've been for the past, 2 or 3 months. And they're just going to stay there and continue to train. And, yeah, he's pretty damn good, this kid. So they're preparing him for the next one,
Oh, good job.
Doing it all there.
And
it's just Francisco and him, and they're training with some other guys. They train with Wayne McCullough, the boxer Wayne McCullough, and they've been training with some, wrestlers, kickboxers, jiu-jitsu, all kinds of different guys. But, yeah, he's preparing him for something. Like Francisco said, this guy's the shit, man. Yeah. So he strictly moved out there to Vegas just to, for this purpose.
I love
the students in Brazil, but this is but he didn't bring a whole team of guys. He brought one guy,
Wow. That's a cool story.
Yeah. So, yeah, I'd love to bring some other guys on, maybe a couple of us. You can get like 4 people total on here. So,
right? That's all we need. The stories would be so cool.
Yeah.
From where this sport started, from the beginning.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
All right.
Well,
time, man. It was great talking to you. Great meeting you. Like I said, love to have you back on again.
Okay. Yeah, please. I'm about it. Hanging out with you, I'm about it.
All right. Well, take care and have a great night.
Stay blessed. Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
All right, bro.